investigation is keeping it confidential. Daniel's cooperation with police, meeting with them 3 times a week for months, is unusual behavior for a guilty person. Most guilty people lawyer up immediately and refuse to talk to police. Daniel's willingness to keep talking could indicate innocence, or it could indicate he's confident there's no evidence to link him to the crime. Drop a comment with your thoughts on Daniel, because public opinion is deeply divided on whether he's an innocent man being unfairly accused or a guilty man hiding behind a facade of cooperation. Theory number 5. Someone else in the household, specifically Daniel's mother, was involved. This theory doesn't get as much attention, but it deserves consideration. Daniel's mother owned or lived on the property. She was there when the children disappeared. She's been cooperative with investigators and with media. But that doesn't mean she couldn't have been involved. Here's how this theory works. Perhaps there was ongoing conflict in the household between Daniel's mother and Malaya. Tensions over the living situation, over parenting styles, over Lilly and Jack's behavior. Maybe Daniel's mother resented having Malaya's children in her home. Maybe something happened on May 1st or 2nd involving the children. Perhaps they broke something or misbehaved, and Daniel's mother reacted violently. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe she was disciplining them, and it went too far. With Daniel's help, or without his knowledge, she disposed of the bodies. The entire family has been covering for her ever since, either consciously or because they genuinely don't know what she did. Supporting evidence. Multi-generational households can have complex, tense dynamics. An older person living with young children, especially children who aren't her biological grandchildren, might experience frustration and resentment. Daniel's mother gave the media a tour of the property, showing the sliding door, explaining how the children could have wandered off. This could be interpreted as her creating a narrative, planting the seed of the wandering theory to deflect from what really happened. If she was involved, Daniel's loyalty to his mother might explain his cooperation with police and his confidence that nothing will be found. He might genuinely not know details of what his mother did, but he might suspect and be protecting her. Contradicting evidence. There's no evidence suggesting Daniel's mother had any issues with the children or with Malaya. She also reportedly passed a polygraph test. The theory requires us to believe that an older woman could overpower or harm 2 children, dispose of their bodies alone or with help, and then maintain the deception for months. It's possible, but there's nothing in the public record suggesting this is what happened. Theory number 6. It was a tragic accident that led to a cover-up. This theory tries to find middle ground between innocent wandering and intentional homicide. Here's how this theory works. Something happened on May 1st or May 2nd that resulted in the death of one or both children, but it was accidental. Maybe one of them fell, hit their head, and died. Maybe there was an accident involving medication or household chemicals or something in the home that proved fatal. Maybe both children got into something they shouldn't have while the adults were briefly not watching them. When the death was discovered, whoever was responsible panicked. Instead of calling 911 and reporting an accident, they decided to hide what happened. They disposed of the body or bodies, cleaned up the scene, and then reported the children missing to cover up the accident. This would explain why there's no evidence of violence, why the adults might pass polygraph tests if they genuinely didn't intend to harm the children, and why the case has been so difficult to solve. The cover-up created a false narrative that investigators have been pursuing while the truth is something completely different. Supporting evidence. Accidents happen with children more often than anyone wants to admit. If an accident occurred and the responsible party panicked, especially if they feared being charged with negligence or manslaughter, a cover-up could seem like the better option in the moment. This theory explains the lack of violence indicators in the evidence while still accounting for the children's disappearance. It explains why someone might be able to pass a polygraph. Guilt and fear about an accident produce different physiological responses than guilt about intentional harm. Contradicting evidence. A cover-up requires planning and calm execution. Someone in a panic after an accident typically doesn't have the presence of mind to dispose of bodies so thoroughly that massive search operations find nothing. Additionally, if it was truly an accident, why not just report it? Yes, there might be consequences, charges of negligence perhaps, But those consequences are far less severe than the consequences of making children disappear and facing potential murder charges. The decision to cover up an accident only makes sense if the people involved are not thinking rationally, or if there's something about the circumstances of the accident that would reveal other crimes or issues. Like this video if you're starting to see why this case is so complex, because every theory has elements that make sense and elements that don't. Theory number 7. Lilly and Jack are still alive, hidden somewhere by someone in the family or a family associate. This is the theory that offers hope, the possibility that these children could still be found alive and returned home. Here's how this theory works. Someone, either Malaya or another family member or someone connected to the family, arranged for Lilly and Jack to be taken and hidden. Not to harm them, but to keep them safe from something or someone. Maybe there was abuse happening in the household, and this was a desperate attempt to protect them. Maybe there's a custody dispute we don't know about, and someone took the children to prevent them from being with someone else. Maybe there's a family secret, something so serious that hiding 2 children seemed like the only option. Those children are now somewhere else, being cared for by someone who's keeping them hidden, waiting for the right time to reveal where they are, or hoping they're never found. Supporting evidence. If the children are alive and hidden, that explains why no bodies have been found. It explains why there's no evidence of violence. It explains some of the strange behavior from family members, the secrets, the silence. If people know the children are alive and safe, they might pass polygraph tests about whether they harmed them because technically they didn't. The complete lack of any trace of Lilly and Jack could indicate they were removed alive and deliberately hidden, rather than harmed and disposed of. Contradicting evidence. This theory requires incredible coordination and resources. Someone would have to be housing, feeding, and caring for 2 young children for 5 months without anyone noticing or reporting it. In the age of constant surveillance, social media, mandatory school enrollment, medical care requirements, how do you hide 2 children? They can't go outside. They can't be seen by neighbors. They can't go to school. What kind of life is that? And what's the end game? When can they ever come out of hiding? Additionally, if this were true, if family members knew the children were alive somewhere, their behavior would be different. There would be relief, not anguish. Daniel's interviews would have a different tone. Malaya's silence would feel different. Everything about the family's demeanor suggests they believe the children are gone, not safely hidden. Make sure you're subscribed because in the final sections of this story, we're going to examine what happens next, what the cadaver dogs might reveal, and what justice might look like for Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Each of these theories has adherents. Online communities have formed around different interpretations of the evidence. Some people are convinced Daniel is guilty. Others believe Malaya is responsible. Some still hold out hope that the children wandered off and will somehow be found alive. Others think there's a conspiracy, multiple people involved, a coordinated cover-up. The truth is, without more evidence, without bodies, without a confession, we can't know which theory is correct. We can only analyze probabilities. And the probability, based on statistics of missing children cases, is that Lilly and Jack are deceased. The probability is that someone in or connected to that household knows what happened. The probability is that the truth is simpler and darker than elaborate theories of abduction or conspiracy. But probability isn't certainty. And until there's definitive proof, until those cadaver dogs find something or someone confesses or new evidence emerges, this case remains exactly what it's been for 5 months. A mystery, a tragedy, and a reminder that sometimes children disappear and we can't figure out why or how or who's responsible. Comment below with which theory you think is most likely, because collective analysis helps. Sometimes a detail one person notices becomes the key that unlocks everything. Malaya Brooks Murray, mother of Lilly Sullivan, age 6. Mother of Jack Sullivan, age 4. Mother of an infant daughter whose name has been kept private. Where is she? What does she know? Why hasn't she said a single word publicly since her children vanished? Let's talk about the woman at the center of this entire case. The person whose silence has become almost as loud as the mystery of her missing children. Before we continue, Drop a comment with where you're watching from and whether you think Malaya's silence is protective of her own grief or protective of a secret. Malaya and Daniel Martel were together for a period of time sufficient to have a child together. That baby was probably planned, or at least accepted, which suggests the relationship was serious. They were living together on the property on Gearlock Road with Daniel's mother. Malaya had brought her 2 children from a previous relationship into this household. On the surface, they were a blended family trying to make it work. But what was happening beneath the surface? The RCMP has never publicly discussed the quality of Malaya and Daniel's relationship. Were they happy? Were they fighting? Was there domestic violence? Was there infidelity? Were there drug or alcohol issues? All of these factors could be relevant to understanding what happened to Lilly and Jack, but they've never been confirmed or denied. What we do know is that the relationship ended abruptly and dramatically the moment the children were reported missing. Within days, Malaya had packed up her infant daughter and left Gearlock Road. She went to stay with her own mother, removing herself from Pictou County, from the media attention, from Daniel, from everything connected to the disappearance. And she blocked Daniel on Facebook, cutting off even digital communication with the man she'd been living with, the father of her youngest child. That's not the behavior of someone who's simply grieving. That's the behavior of someone who either blames Daniel for what happened or is trying to distance herself from him for some other crucial reason. Like this video if you're following along, because Malaya's actions in the days after the disappearance might be the biggest clue we have about what really happened. Let's analyze the possibilities. Possibility 1. Malaya genuinely doesn't know what happened to Lilly and Jack, and her silence is purely about grief and trauma. Losing 2 children simultaneously is unimaginable trauma. Some people shut down completely when faced with that level of loss. They can't function. They can't speak. They certainly can't face cameras and reporters and the public. Malaya might be catatonic with grief. She might be under psychiatric care. She might be on medication that makes her unable to participate in media appeals. She might have specifically been advised by mental health professionals to avoid media, to avoid social media, to protect herself from the additional trauma of public scrutiny. In this scenario, blocking Daniel might be about needing to cut off all reminders of what was lost. If Daniel was part of her daily life when Lilly and Jack were alive, maintaining contact with him might be too painful. She might not blame him for anything. She might simply be unable to interact with anyone from that chapter of her life. This is the most sympathetic interpretation of Malaya's behavior, and it could absolutely be true. Grief affects people in wildly different ways. Possibility 2. Malaya believes Daniel is responsible for what happened to her children, and she's protecting herself and her surviving child by staying away from him. In this scenario, Malaya doesn't know exactly what Daniel did or how he did it, but she knows in her gut that he's responsible. Maybe there were warning signs she ignored. Maybe he had a temper. Maybe he resented Lilly and Jack. Maybe there were incidents of inappropriate behavior or discipline that Malaya witnessed but didn't properly address. When the children vanished, maybe everything clicked into place for Malaya. Maybe she realized what Daniel must have done. In this case, her immediate departure with the baby makes perfect sense. She's protecting her surviving child from a man she now believes is capable of harming children. Her blocking him on Facebook is about safety. She doesn't want him to know where she is. She doesn't want him to have any access to her or to their daughter. Her silence publicly could be because she's terrified of Daniel, or because she's been advised that speaking publicly could endanger her if Daniel is indeed dangerous. This interpretation casts Malaya as another victim in this case, not a perpetrator. It suggests she's a mother who tragically didn't recognize danger until it was too late, and now she's living with guilt and fear. Possibility 3. Malaya knows what happened because she was present when it happened, but she wasn't the primary actor. Maybe Daniel did something to Lilly and Jack, and Malaya witnessed it or discovered it immediately afterward. Maybe Daniel coerced her into helping him cover it up. Maybe he threatened her, told her that if she reported what happened, he'd say she was responsible, he'd take their daughter away, he'd harm her too. In a state of fear and shock, Malaya might have helped dispose of evidence, clean up, create the false narrative of the children wandering off. But as soon as she could, as soon as she had the opportunity when police and media were present and Daniel couldn't stop her, she fled. She took her baby and ran. Her silence since then is because she's caught. If she tells the truth, she incriminates herself as an accessory after the fact. If she maintains the lie, she has to live with what she knows. So she says nothing. She hides with her mother. She blocks out the world and tries to survive. This interpretation makes Malaya a complicated figure, not innocent, but not the primary villain. A person who made terrible choices under duress and is now trapped by those choices. Subscribe to this channel because understanding Malaya's role in this case might be crucial to solving it. Possibility 4. Malaya was the primary actor. She harmed her own children, or arranged for them to be harmed, and everything since has been theater. In this darkest interpretation, Malaya is responsible for whatever happened to Lilly and Jack. Maybe she was suffering from postpartum psychosis that wasn't limited to her infant. Maybe she resented the children, saw them as obstacles to her relationship with Daniel or to the life she wanted. Maybe there was abuse happening in the home, and the children threatened to tell someone, so Malaya silenced them permanently. Maybe it was an accident during discipline that went too far, and Malaya's cover-up has been so effective that even investigators can't find evidence. In this scenario, her immediate departure from Gearlock Road is about getting away from the scene of the crime, from the location that reminds her of what she did. Her silence is because she can't speak without incriminating herself. Any public statement would require her to lie about her emotions, about her loss, and she might not trust herself to do that convincingly on camera. Blocking Daniel could be because he suspects her, or because maintaining the relationship while knowing what she did to her children was psychologically impossible. This interpretation makes Malaya a monster, a woman who harmed her own children and is now hiding behind grief and trauma to avoid consequences. The problem with analyzing Malaya is that we have almost no information about her. Unlike Daniel, who's done multiple interviews, who's been visible and vocal, Malaya is a ghost. We don't know what she's thinking. We don't know what she's feeling. We don't know what she's told investigators in private interviews. We don't even know for certain that she's at her mother's house. That's just been reported by media sources who may or may not have verified it. Everything about Malaya is speculation based on absence. And absence is incredibly difficult to interpret. Is her silence evidence of guilt, or is it evidence of trauma so severe that she can't function? Is her departure from Gearlock Road evidence that she's running from something, or evidence that she's protecting herself and her baby from danger? Is her blocking of Daniel evidence that she blames him, or evidence that she can't stand to be reminded of the life she had when her children were alive? We don't know. Comment below with your gut reaction to Malaya, because sometimes intuition picks up on patterns that logical analysis misses. Let's talk about what Malaya must be experiencing right now, assuming she's innocent, assuming she had nothing to do with her children's disappearance. She's lost both of her children to some unknown fate. She doesn't know if they're alive or dead. She doesn't know if they're suffering. She doesn't know if she'll ever see them again. She has an infant daughter who needs her care, who needs her to be functional, but how do you care for one child when 2 others are missing? The guilt would be overwhelming. Why didn't I wake up when they left the house? Why didn't I hear something? What kind of mother am I that my children could vanish without me knowing? The fear would be constant. Are they cold? Are they scared? Are they calling for me? The not knowing would be torture worse than any definitive answer, no matter how terrible that answer might be. On top of all of that, add the public scrutiny. Malaya must know that people are talking about her online. She must know that some people suspect her. She must know that her silence is being interpreted as guilt by thousands of strangers who've decided she's responsible for her children's disappearance. Even if she wanted to speak publicly, even if she had the emotional capacity to do a media interview, her lawyer, and she definitely has a lawyer by now, would almost certainly advise against it. Anything she says can and will be analyzed, dissected, misinterpreted, and potentially used against her if charges are ever filed. So silence, as painful and suspicious as it appears, might actually be the smartest legal strategy. Now, let's talk about what Malaya must be experiencing if she's not innocent, if she knows what happened because she was involved. The guilt would be different, but no less overwhelming. These were her children. She carried them, birthed them, raised them for 6 and 4 years respectively. Even if she harmed them, even if she's responsible for their disappearance, there would be moments when the reality of what she did crashes over her. Those moments when she looks at her infant daughter and remembers Lilly and Jack at that age. Those moments when she hears a child laugh and remembers her children's laughter. The knowledge that she destroyed them, that she's the reason they're gone, would be a weight that no human could carry without breaking. The fear would be different too. Not fear about what happened to the children because she'd know, but fear about getting caught. Fear that investigators will find the evidence they need. Fear that Daniel will tell what he knows if he knows anything. Fear that her own mother, who's sheltering her now, will figure out the truth. Fear that she'll slip up, say something revealing, show emotion at the wrong time, or fail to show emotion when she should. Living with that level of constant fear and guilt for 5 months would be its own kind of hell. Like this video if you're understanding the psychological complexity of this case, because whoever's responsible is living with unbearable knowledge right now. There's another aspect of Malaya's situation that needs to be addressed: her infant daughter. This child is being raised by a mother who's either traumatized by the loss of her other children or complicit in their disappearance. Either way, that baby is growing up in an environment shaped by this tragedy. If Malaya is innocent and grieving, is she able to properly bond with and care for her infant while dealing with the loss of Lilly and Jack? If Malaya is guilty, is she able to be a good mother to one child while knowing what she did to the others? Child welfare services must be involved at some level. They'd want to ensure the infant is safe, that she's being properly cared for, that she's not at risk. But if no charges have been filed, if there's no evidence of wrongdoing, there's no legal basis to remove the child from Malaya's care. So that baby remains with her mother, and we can only hope she's being protected and loved regardless of what her mother may or may not have done. The relationship between Malaya and Daniel is another crucial element. They had a child together. That creates a permanent connection. At some point, Daniel is going to want to see his daughter. At some point, custody arrangements will need to be formalized. How is that going to work when Malaya has blocked Daniel and wants nothing to do with him? How is it going to work if one or both of them are eventually charged in connection with Lilly and Jack's disappearance? Family court proceedings around their daughter could become incredibly complex and could potentially reveal information about what happened to Lilly and Jack. If Malaya tries to claim Daniel is dangerous and shouldn't have access to their daughter, she'll need to provide evidence or reasoning. If Daniel fights for custody and claims Malaya is unstable or dangerous, he'll need to provide evidence too. Those proceedings, if they happen, could blow this case wide open. There are reports that Daniel has been able to see his daughter at some point, that there was a photo posted of them together. If that's true, it suggests some level of communication or coordination between Daniel and Malaya, even if it's through lawyers or family members. That's interesting because it contrasts with the narrative of complete separation and blocking. Maybe the blocking was temporary, a heat-of-the-moment response that's since been partially walked back. Or maybe supervised visitation is happening through third parties without direct Daniel-Malaya contact. The details haven't been made public, but they matter. They tell us something about whether these two people are cooperating with each other or treating each other as adversaries. Belinda Gray, the paternal grandmother of Lilly and Jack, has been the most visible family member throughout this case. She's done interviews. She's advocated for the children. She's kept their names in the public consciousness. What's her relationship with Malaya? Lilly and Jack were her son's children, but her son, the biological father, isn't part of this story. Was he ever involved in the children's lives? Does he have any information? Is he cooperating with investigators? The family structure here is complex and not fully explained in media reports. But Belinda's advocacy suggests she's desperate for answers about what happened to her grandchildren, and that desperation might be directed at Malaya, at Daniel, at both of them. As we approach the 5-month mark since Lilly and Jack disappeared, Malaya's continued silence becomes more and more difficult to understand or defend. If she's innocent, at what point does she have an obligation to speak up, to beg for her children's return, to do media appeals? If she's not innocent, How long can she maintain the silence before the weight of it breaks her? Stay subscribed, because if and when Malaya finally speaks, when she finally tells her story, it's going to change everything about how we understand this case. Her voice is the missing piece. Her perspective is the one we need to truly understand what happened on Gairloch Road. And until she speaks, Malaya Brooks Murray remains the most mysterious figure in a case that's full of mysteries. A mother who lost her children and responded by vanishing herself. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we're entering the final phase of the story, where all the questions we've been asking might finally get answers. September 30th, 2025. 5 months since Lilly and Jack Sullivan were last confirmed to be alive, last seen on that Dollarama security camera on May 1st at 2:45 in the afternoon. 5 months of searching, investigating, theorizing, hoping, grieving. 5 months of a family torn apart. 5 months of a community traumatized. 5 months of 2 children existing somewhere between life and death, present and absent, remembered but not found. This is where we are now. This is what 5 months of a missing persons investigation looks like when nothing is resolved. Before we go any further, comment below with your thoughts after following this entire case. What do you believe happened? Who do you think is responsible? What do you think will happen next? Your engagement matters, your voice matters, so please share your perspective. Let me tell you what's happening now, in late September 2025, nearly 5 months into this nightmare. The RCMP investigation continues. They've never stopped working this case. Behind the scenes, away from media cameras, detectives are still analyzing evidence, still following leads, still building their case. The cadaver dogs from British Columbia have been deployed to search the wooded areas around Gairloch Road. As of the latest information available, no results from that search have been publicly announced. That could mean the dogs found nothing, or it could mean the dogs found something, and the investigation is keeping that discovery confidential while they conduct further analysis and potentially prepare charges. In missing persons investigations, especially ones with this much public attention, the RCMP is under no obligation to provide real-time updates. They release information when it serves the investigation to do so. So the silence about the cadaver dog results doesn't necessarily mean nothing was found. It might just mean it's too early to announce what was found. The $150,000 reward remains active. Anyone with information can still call the RCMP tip line, call Crime Stoppers, call their local police department. The number of tips has likely slowed dramatically as the case has aged, but even one tip, even one piece of information, could be what breaks everything open. Someone out there might know something. Someone might have seen something on May 1st or May 2nd that they didn't think was important at the time. Someone might have heard someone say something revealing. Someone might have security camera footage they never checked. There's still hope that the public can help solve this case. Hit that like button if you believe community involvement matters in cases like this, because it does. Public pressure keeps cases alive. Public attention prevents them from becoming cold cases filed away and forgotten. Daniel Martel continues to cooperate with investigators. He continues to do media interviews. His story hasn't changed. He maintains his innocence. He expresses confidence that he'll be vindicated. He wants another polygraph test. He's meeting with RCMP officers multiple times a week. From his perspective, or at least from what he presents publicly, he's doing everything he can to help find Lilly and Jack. Is he actually helping, or is he maintaining a performance designed to make him look innocent? We still don't know. The passage of time will either vindicate Daniel or condemn him. If evidence emerges linking him to the children's disappearance, his months of media appearances will be reframed as the calculated manipulations of a guilty man. If no evidence emerges and the case remains unsolved, he'll spend the rest of his life under a cloud of suspicion, never formally accused but never truly cleared either. That's the cruel reality of high-profile missing persons cases. Even innocent people connected to them can never fully escape the shadow. Malaya Brooks Murray remains silent. 5 months later, she still hasn't spoken publicly. She's still away from Gairloch Road, reportedly staying with her mother, raising her infant daughter away from the media, away from the investigation's epicenter, away from everything and everyone connected to the life she had when Lilly and Jack were alive. Her silence has become its own statement. It says something, but what exactly it says depends entirely on what you believe about her involvement or lack thereof. The school buses that drive past Gearlock Road every day are a painful reminder of what should be. Lily should be in first or second grade now, learning to read more complex books, making friends, bringing home artwork and homework. Jack should be in kindergarten, learning his letters and numbers, playing at recess, discovering the world. Instead, their absence is marked by empty seats on those buses, by teachers who remember them, by classmates who ask their parents what happened to Lilly and Jack. The community impact of this case extends far beyond the immediate family. Parents in Pictou County are more vigilant now. They lock their doors more carefully. They watch their children more closely. They've had conversations with their kids about not going outside alone, about not talking to strangers, about what to do if they feel unsafe. The loss of Lilly and Jack, even though their fate remains unknown, has changed how an entire community thinks about child safety. That's part of the tragedy, too. The loss of innocence, the loss of that sense that terrible things happen elsewhere, not here, not to us. Let's talk about what happens next, because this investigation isn't over. Cases like this can take years to solve. Without bodies, without witnesses, without confessions, investigators have to be extraordinarily patient and thorough. They have to wait for forensic results, which can take months. They have to follow every lead, no matter how unlikely. They have to review evidence multiple times looking for details they might have missed initially. They have to wait for someone to make a mistake, to say something inconsistent, to reveal knowledge they shouldn't have. Time is both the investigator's enemy and their ally. Time allows memories to fade, evidence to degrade, witnesses to move away or die. But time also creates pressure. People who are holding secrets find them harder to carry as months turn to years. Relationships fracture. Alliances shift. Someone who is protecting someone else out of loyalty or fear might eventually decide that loyalty isn't worth the burden anymore. Drop a comment if you think someone involved in this case will eventually confess, because confession is often how these cases are finally solved. Here are the possible outcomes for this investigation. Outcome 1. The cadaver dogs find human remains that are confirmed to be Lilly and Jack. This is what everyone is waiting for, even though it's the outcome nobody wants. If bodies are found, the investigation shifts immediately to homicide. Forensic pathologists examine the remains to determine cause of death. How did these children die? Was it violence, trauma, suffocation, drowning, exposure, something else? The location where the bodies are found becomes crucial evidence. Who had access to that location? Who would know about it? Are there tire tracks, footprints, other physical evidence connecting someone to the disposal site? If cause of death can be determined, and if evidence at the scene points to a specific person, arrests can be made and charges filed. This is the cleanest resolution from an investigative standpoint. It's horrific for the family, it's tragic beyond words, but it provides answers and accountability. Outcome 2. The cadaver dogs find nothing, and the investigation continues without physical evidence of death. This is where the case is at risk of becoming cold. Without bodies, without a crime scene, without physical evidence, prosecutors are extremely reluctant to file charges. Can you prove someone committed murder when you can't prove anyone is dead? It's been done. There have been successful no-body homicide prosecutions, but they require overwhelming circumstantial evidence. Witnesses who heard threats. Financial records showing suspicious activity. Digital evidence showing planning. Confessions to friends or family members. The kind of evidence that builds an undeniable picture even without physical proof of death. If investigators believe they have that level of evidence, they might move forward with charges even without finding Lilly and Jack. But it would be a risky prosecution, and the RCMP and Crown prosecutors would need to be absolutely certain before proceeding. Outcome 3. New witness comes forward with information that breaks the case open. This happens more often than you might think. Someone who is scared to talk initially finds the courage months or years later. Someone who is protecting someone else decides they can't anymore. Someone who witnessed something finally realizes the importance of what they saw. A single witness with credible information about what happened on May 1st or May 2nd, about who was involved, about where Lilly and Jack are could solve this entire case. That's why the tip lines remain open. That's why the reward remains active. The perfect witness might still be out there, just needing the right incentive or the right moment to come forward. Outcome 4. Someone confesses. Guilt is a powerful force. People who've committed terrible acts often can't live with the knowledge forever. They confess to friends, to family, to romantic partners. They confess to clergy or therapists. Sometimes they confess directly to police, walking into a station months or years later and saying, "I need to tell you what I did." If someone involved in Lilly and Jack's disappearance eventually confesses, whether that person is Daniel, Malaya, another family member, or someone we don't even know is connected yet, that confession becomes the cornerstone of the prosecution. Confessions are powerful evidence, especially if they include details only the perpetrator would know. Like this video, if you believe truth has a way of emerging eventually, because even in the darkest cases, secrets rarely stay hidden forever. Outcome 5. The case remains unsolved indefinitely, becomes a cold case, and years or decades from now, advances in technology or a deathbed confession finally provides answers. This is the outcome everyone fears. Lilly and Jack become another unsolved mystery, their names added to the tragic list of missing children whose fates were never determined. The family never gets closure. The community never gets answers. The case file sits in an RCMP storage facility, periodically reviewed by cold case detectives, but never solved. Then one day, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 50 years from now, something changes. DNA technology advances to the point where tiny samples that couldn't be tested in 2025 suddenly yield results. Someone on their deathbed decides they need to clear their conscience. A property is sold and excavated and construction workers find something. The case is suddenly active again, and finally, after all those years, the truth emerges. It's not the resolution anyone wants, but it happens. Cold cases do get solved sometimes decades after they went cold. As we sit here in late September 2025, none of us knows which outcome will occur. We don't know if Lilly and Jack will be found tomorrow or never. We don't know if someone will be arrested next week or never. We don't know if this case will be solved in our lifetime. What we do know is that 2 children are gone. 2 small human beings who had names and personalities and favorite things, and people who loved them. Lily Sullivan, 6 years old. Jack Sullivan, 4 years old. They deserve to be remembered as more than a true crime case, more than a mystery, more than content for YouTube videos and Reddit threads. They were real. They mattered. Their lives had value beyond the tragedy of how those lives may have ended. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to continue following this case. Every update, every development, every piece of new information will be here to cover it, to analyze it, to try to understand it. This case isn't over. Not by a long shot. Let me share some final thoughts as we close this chapter, though not the final chapter of the story, because the story continues until there are answers. Think about Daniel Martel sitting in that interview, saying with absolute certainty that the cadaver dogs won't find anything. Think about what that statement means. Is it the confidence of an innocent man who knows he did nothing wrong? Or is it the confidence of a guilty man who knows where the bodies are and knows the dogs aren't searching in the right place? Think about Malaya Brooks Murray hiding with her infant daughter, 5 months of silence, 5 months of not speaking about her missing children. Think about what that silence means. Is it the protective cocoon of a traumatized mother who can't face the world? Or is it the calculated strategy of someone who knows that speaking would reveal too much? Think about the property on Gearlock Road, that sliding door that could have been a portal to tragedy, those woods that have been searched again and again without revealing their secrets. Think about what happened there on May 1st or May 2nd. Think about those last moments when Lilly and Jack were still alive, still okay, before whatever happened. Did they know they were in danger? Were they scared? Did they call out for help that never came? Or did whatever happened occur so quickly that they never even knew? These are the questions that haunt everyone who's followed this case. 2 children deserve justice. A family deserves answers. A community deserves peace. And you, if you're the person holding the key to all of that, you deserve the relief of finally telling the truth. The RCMP tip line is still open. Crime Stoppers is still accepting anonymous information. The $150,000 reward is still active. There's still time to do the right thing. Lily Sullivan, Jack Sullivan, 6 years old and 4 years old when they vanished. They would be older now if they're alive. They would have changed, grown, experienced more of life. Or they're gone, their potential snuffed out, their future stolen, their stories ended far too soon. Either way, they matter. Their story matters. And we will not stop telling it until there are answers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for watching until the very end. Stay subscribed because this story will continue, and we'll be here to cover every development until the day when we can finally say we know what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. Until then, remember them, say their names, and never stop hoping that truth and justice will prevail.